Welcome, everyone. So we're just going to get started. Again, hello, everyone. My name is Janelle Williams, and I work for Empower Somerset, a nonprofit organization located in Somerville, New Jersey. Our mission is to empower individuals and families to make positive lifestyle choices by promoting healthy communities through education, collaboration, and connection to resources. Welcome to our youth parent event, Wellness Turning Challenges into Opportunities. Just a heads up, this event will be recorded and available. Tonight, we will hear from our keynote speaker, Marnie Rhoda, who has been in the field of trauma, grief, and suicide prevention for numerous years, working with youth and families. So why are we here tonight? Right? In the United States, 1 in 5 youth aged 13 to 18 live with a mental health condition. In 2021, the CDC reported that 57% of surveyed high school female students in New Jersey experience persistent or ongoing feelings of sadness or hopelessness. This is a major increase from 36% in 2011. Also in New Jersey, 30% of surveyed females and 14% of male high school students said they seriously considered suicide during the past year. We want to let everyone know that tonight we will be discussing some sensitive topics. We want to be mindful of these things and to note there will be resources offered in the chat today, so keep a lookout. With that, we do thank you for attending our event tonight to discuss this important topic of wellness. We will be giving away prizes throughout the evening. By attending tonight, you will be entered into a raffle for a $25 Amazon gift card. So that's amazing. The last prize will be given away at the very end of the event, so please stay for the duration. To be eligible to win, you must be present when the prize is drawn, and you must provide an email address and phone number to receive the prize. If you are not present when we draw your name, we will draw another name. Also, by filling out the evaluation at the end of the event, you will be entered into another raffle. So please take a few minutes to fill out the evaluation. Your feedback is important to us. The evaluation will be posted in the chat tonight, and in case you missed it, it will be also emailed to you after the event. So without further ado, our first drawing winner is Alicia Roper. Congratulations, Alicia.
Thank you.
If you can, please give that information. You just received a $25 gift card. Please private message Jennifer Gomez _empower. Hopefully you can see her, your phone number, and email that you would like the gift card to be sent to. Okay. All right. A few housekeeping items before we move on. Please stay muted throughout the event. If you want to ask questions, you can enter them into the chat at any time. Okay. We will be monitoring the chat. We will also allow time for questions after the presentation. If you don't feel comfortable posting a question in the chat, you can use the anonymous online question site that we have posted. It's onlinequestion.org. And our event number is 521-2024. All this information can be found in the chat box, okay? We will also allow time for questions after our speaker presents. Now, I'd like to introduce our Youth Advisory Board member, Anju Reeve, who will be telling us a little about YAB. Take it away.
Hi, I'm Anju Reeve, and I am one of the Empower Youth Advisory Board members. The Empower Youth Advisory Board is currently looking for youth interested in making a difference in our community and in New Jersey. The Youth Advisory Board, or YAB, is a group of young people striving to vocalize the needs and strengths of youth by serving as ambassadors on behalf of various public health topics that affect youth. The mission of YAB is to empower and express ideas of youth and to bridge the gap between the state and the youth of the communities. Our YAB meets once a month on Zoom and we work on prevention in many areas and along with mental and physical health and wellness and young people. We would love to have you. We have a lot of fun while making a positive impact in our community. You can see the link in our application in the chat. Now for the introduction of our guest speaker.
So I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Marnie Rhoda. Marnie has worked with youth, their families, their schools, and their communities in the fields of trauma, grief, and suicide prevention for over 20 years. In that time, she witnessed unimaginable strength and resilience in the face of devastating loss. She is honored to bring the wisdom she has learned from others to today's youth and their families. Just a reminder, we will be having a Q&A session, so please post your questions in the chat or during the presentation. Without further ado, take it away, Marnie.
Thanks, Janelle. I had forgotten there was going to be prizes tonight. I love anything that has prizes attached to it. So now I'm extra excited to be here today. And I want to thank Empower Somerset for inviting me to speak with you all today. I fully welcome questions in the chat as we go. Feel free to ask and we'll respond right away in the flow of the conversation. I would love to have this be much more of a conversation than a presentation. So with that being said, what we're going to focus on today, it's pretty straightforward. I want to talk a little bit about what is mental wellness, because sometimes people think that means you have to be happy all the time. And that's not quite right. So we'll talk about wellness, and then we're going to talk a lot about protective factors, what they are, how we get them, and why we need them. And that we'll use that to build in then to how we can enhance our mental wellness, because we have control here. Things aren't just auto dictated to us. We can have some power and control over our own wellness on a regular basis. And then we'll talk about what we do, what we can do when things get tough, when we have to use some of that. We're going to talk about resilience when it gets here, when we actually have to use that resilience that we've built up. And we'll close with who we can return to for support. And I want to underscore, I think it's really great that Empower Somerset immediately put in helping resources in the chat so that they are available. Today, we're talking about everyday problems, but I know at any given moment in an audience of people, there's going to be people who maybe are coping with things that feel bigger than they are right now, or bigger than their resources are, and they need extra help. And I really want to encourage everyone here listening with us this evening to use the resources that are available. We end with how to ask for help and why it's important to ask for help, but even throughout the presentation, I just want to underscore we are not meant to go it on our own, and sometimes all of us need extra help in some way or another. So I also want to point out that this isn't school and you don't need to take notes. You will get all these all the slides that I'm covering either in the chat and or after the presentation. So if there's anything that you want to remember and keep a handle on, you'll have it. You don't need to write it down as we go. And so, as I already mentioned, let's just start with the fact that mental wellness is not feeling happy all the time. The people you see, and we all know people, sometimes I'm that person, who walk around all happy all the time, making lemonade out of every lemon that's thrown at them. That's not to say that they have the best mental wellness. The most happy people might not necessarily have the best mental wellness. What mental wellness really is feeling the right feelings for the situations you encounter. It's when your feelings line up and match with the situations you have, which means that when things get hard, your mental wellness doesn't necessarily have to take a tumble. When things get hard and you're frustrated and exhausted and confused, that doesn't mean your mental wellness is lower. It means you're feeling the right feeling for a hard situation right now. And let's face it, we all have good and bad days. We all have wins and losses. Sometimes we have times when life is pretty good and you're kind of cruising on easy street for a week or a month, maybe longer. And sometimes not so much. Sometimes things get hard. So if mental wellness isn't about being happy all the time, right? What it really is about is it's what the official definition is: the capacity to think, feel, and act in ways that enhance our ability to enjoy life and handle challenges as they occur, right? So it's just about having feelings that match your situations. It's much easier for me to think about that, matching feelings to situations versus that longer definition. And it also means having the right size feeling for the situation you're handling, right? So sometimes we have feelings that can seem a little bit bigger than the situation calls for. So, and building our ability to work through challenging events and kind of get those right size feelings is important. It's a work in progress. You know, my goal would be when I'm in a hurry and I'm getting stuck in traffic, my feeling is frustrated, not furious, right? That's probably the right size. And for many of you, when you don't get invited to something your friends are doing, you're disappointed, not devastated. Again, for some of you, the right size feeling could be different than for somebody else, but that's the idea, is having that feeling kind of match the situation, not just the name of the feeling, but the size of the feeling as well. And one of the things that really help us cope with hard times and have those right size, right feelings are what we call protective factors. Again, here's the official definition. Protective factors are skills, strengths, resources, supports, or coping strategies that help us deal more effectively with stressful events. I don't expect anyone to remember that. Here's how I remember protective factors. They're bumpers, whether it's the bumper on your car or the bumpers on these bumper cars. They're bumpers, and what the bumpers on a bumper car do is they insulate you. In a bumper car, you're meant to bump into other people. And when you do, if you've never done this, maybe you've seen it, right? When you do, you get a bit of a jolt, right? You feel it, but you don't feel it like you have to go to the hospital for whiplash. It's kind of fun even. It's a happy kind of little jolt because the bumper on the bumper car is absorbing the impact. So protective factors that we have and that we build are bumpers around us, because life's going to bump us. It's going to bump all of us. Sometimes life bumps us little nudges. Sometimes life bumps us full-on impacts, right? Life's going to bump us. And our ability to recover from that bump has a lot to do with how many protective factors we've built around ourselves. So I hope you're thinking to yourself, great, Marnie, how do I build these bumpers, right? How do I get the bumper cars? So I'm going to tell you. The ways to build your bumper and the things that we all need to have that bumper are things like participation in group activities. This youth advisory board is an example of a bumper, isn't it? Right? Participating in a youth advisory board is a great example of that. Having supportive family relationships or religious practices, having physical exercise and a healthy diet, having positive emotions and having hope for the future, and having active coping skills. And again, this is something you might think, oh, some people are good at this, some people aren't, I'm just not good at it. These are things we can actively build and develop, right? So active coping skills like journaling, connecting in your community with clubs or groups, talking to a trusted adult, telling them about how you're doing. Those are all really helpful protective factors that build that bumper, that keep me from being frustrated versus furious when I'm stuck in traffic, and might keep you from being disappointed versus devastated when something doesn't go your way. The more you build up the bumper, the less those hard times are going to take you down, because the hard times, as I said, come for all of us. So, because I think that's so important, I actually made you guys a little checklist. This is why it's handy. You're going to have a PDF to keep track of some of the things I'm giving you today. Here are things that I'm going to ask you to actively seek out and see how many check boxes you might today have 2 things you want to check. Maybe you can actively seek out to add another check this summer. And then maybe next year, another check. So I know that not all these are easily attainable, but you want to look through and see how many of these you can have and how many of these you can add. Things that we know, and this is specific for youth when it comes to what prevents risk and promotes resilience, having someone, anyone who loves you unconditionally. Having at least one best friend defined as someone you can trust and have fun with. Because I know there's lots of definitions of who a best friend, what makes a best friend. Having regular opportunities to help others. You know, I love this one because it's not just about how the cards life has dealt you and what's available to you. This is about what you can do to help others that actually helps you. Regular opportunities to help others, whether that's volunteering, just even helping a neighbor bringing their garbage can from the street back to their garage. Having regular involvement in organized sports or other physical activity. That might not be your cup of tea. So also, you know, having active membership in a civic group or a non-sport social group, scouts, faith-based youth group, those sort of things. Having an engaging hobby or a creative or intellectual pastime, either alone or in a group. This, I think, this reading counts as an engaging hobby. If you're the kind of person who gets lost in a story, gets lost in a graphic novel, gets lost in a comic book, these are all things I think that fall under there. Things that you know, really give you joy, I think all fall under there. And then having an adult, not a parent, but some other adult, someone else that you can trust and can count on when you need them, when you need help, when you need advice. That might be a coach, a teacher, a minister, a neighbor, could be a relative, could be your big brother, right? But just another adult that you can count on besides a parent. So again, this is a checklist you can use. And all the idea here is all of these things build the bumper, right, around us. And what that bumper does is it helps us increase our resilience. Now, resilience might be a word that's familiar to some of you, might not be. It's what we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so together. So I'm going to talk more about it because I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but resilience, together with protective factors and coping skills, can help your ability to bounce back or overcome adversity. That's what resilience means. And I just want to let you know, as you see from these palm trees right here, that's not an accidental picture. Resilience is not just used for people, right? Things can be resilient as well. Plants can be resilient. Animals can be resilient. It's about bouncing back or overcoming adversity. So some examples of resilience are things like the rubber around the bumper car we just talked about, right? Rubber has an elastic quality that allows it to return to its original state after being stretched. That's resilient. Bamboo is very flexible. It can sustain high winds without breaking. These palm trees are bending with the wind versus breaking. Bending is resilient because you don't break. Other things that I see in nature that it just always gives me it gives me a joy and reminds me to clean my gutters. When a tree starts growing out of my gutters, that's pretty resilient, that a seed decided to, in all the leaves and other garbage, dirt, etc., that is in my gutter, a tree grows in a dirty old gutter, right? Like, that's pretty amazing. The same thing if I'm going for a walk in the woods and I see a tree that's fallen down. How many times is that tree still growing? Does one of the little branches of that tree start to sprout and grow upright? Trees, nature is incredibly resilient, right? So that's the idea of resilience. I think you maybe get the picture here. Now I want to talk about, for you, resilience, what it means for you and I. And it's the ability to withstand or recover quickly from difficult situations. And it's been around, this word, for a long time. It actually has been around since the Middle Ages. And it's that bounce back ability. And there's basically resilience, what you might not know, because you might think to yourself, well, some people are resilient and some people aren't. And what I'm going to tell you is resilience is a learned skill. Unlike the palm tree that just grew that way, and right, you and I can learn to become more resilient. You don't have to be born resilient. You build resilience by choosing behaviors, thoughts, and actions that we learn and develop over time. So here we have today quite a few youth who have the opportunity now at your age to practice and build some resilience. And we're going to go through a step-by-step process this evening to do that. But you can learn and build resilience, and building that skill and practicing resilience today will help you not just with the next thing that happens to you this year, but will help you your whole life, because like anything that we learn, we retain it for the rest of our lives. So I want to share a couple stories of resilience. Some of these you might have heard of, some of them you might not. If you have a favorite story of resilience you want, or a person you know who's overcome adversity and is very resilient, you can feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to talk about these for a couple minutes. The man in the wheelchair there is Eric LeGrand. He in 2010, so for me, not long ago, 2010 was yesterday for me, but most of you weren't quite yet born in 2010. He played for Rutgers. He was a college football player, and he suffered a severe spinal cord injury during his college football game. That paralyzed him from the neck down. Right, neck down, that's the very severe injury, and he refused to let those circumstances define him. Instead, he really became determined, and he worked on being very positive, and he continued to face challenges and setbacks, and continued to research, to learn more, work hard. He advocates for research and supports individuals with similar conditions. He's always doing public speaking and raising awareness for things. There was a really powerful demonstration of his resilience in 2014, just 4 years after his spinal cord injury, when he defied the odds and stood up with some assistance from his wheelchair during the Rutgers University graduation ceremony, and stood up in front of everybody despite his spinal cord injury. So he's a really good inspiration. Another one you can see with her with a beautiful purple on her head is Malala Yousafzai. Yousafzai. And Malala, you might have heard of her before. At the age of 15 in Pakistan, she was an activist even at 15 for female education. At the age of 15, she survived an assassination attempt by the Taliban, who shot her in the head. She survived that attempt and went on to continue speaking out, becoming a global symbol of resilience. So despite the continual threats of violence and the violence she sustained, she continues to speak out in the face of the oppression. She is the youngest Nobel Prize laureate so far in the world because of her resilience to come back. The background in this is Greensburg, Kansas. In 2007, the town of Greensburg, Kansas was destroyed. 90% of the town was completely destroyed by a tornado. Only 10% of the buildings remained in the town. What the residents of Greensburg did was they saw this as an opportunity to rebuild their town in a sustainable way, in an environmentally friendly way. They formed committees, held meetings, and collaborated with architects and urban planners, and developed a comprehensive building plan. Today, Greensburg, Kansas is a model for sustainable living across the country, with energy efficient buildings, renewable energy sources, and a strong sense of community resilience. Finally, the Dark Knight here. The Dark Knight, Bruce Wayne. I'm not sure how many of you, I had to do a little research. I'm gonna just tell you the truth. I'm not so good at popular culture sometimes, and I've yet to see a Batman movie. You can feel free to weigh in on the chat about what you think about the fact that I have yet to see one. But you know, Bruce Wayne, as a 12-year-old, witnessed the murder of both of his parents. And that caused him as a 12-year-old to have difficulties falling asleep. He had, you know, he had nightmares. He really struggled. And through resilience, through empathy, problem solving, self-confidence, and help seeking, he became an excellent detective, a problem solver, an advocate for people who needed help. What you really see here is that he used his caring and supportive relationships, Alfred, as an example of that, of a caring adult in his life, who became who was really a surrogate parent and offered him encouragement and reassurance to overcome what he saw, right? So Bruce Wayne, those are great stories of resilience, just to really reinforce how it's out there. However, I think we need to talk about everyday resilience, because most of us happily won't face challenges catastrophic as a spinal cord injury or an assassination attempt, right? That is not in our cards for most of us very happily, but we do have to face spilled milk and I'm not being dismissive of problems that we face, but right, from spilled milk to other problems like needing to make friends in school, getting a bad grade, not making a team, or getting into a club that you wanted to be in, handling conflicts with friends and peers, not being able to go somewhere that your friends are able to go to, and so much more. So many more things happen on a daily basis that require us to be resilient, right? And require us to overcome what's happened. And the idea here is, I didn't make a slide for this, but I want to point out something that I learned recently. There's actually a field of study called happiness research. In the pie chart of what it takes to have long-term happiness. So not like the day-to-day, but like long-term happiness. So the big pie of happiness, what creates happiness? Do you know how big the wedge is for things that happen to us? So the events that occur in our life, it's a 10% wedge. Only 10% of what makes us long-term happy is driven by what happens to us, the events in our lives. That's the only power those things have, 10%, unless you give them more. But what happens to us only counts for 10% of our happiness. A big chunk of it is genetics and biology. I'll just tell you right off the bat, half that pie cut in half, and that's kind of how we're born, because some of us are sunnier than others. But the other 40% is our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and actions. Those are the things that drive happiness, which is what we're going to do now, right? Is we're going to talk about how we use resilience. We build up resilience with those thoughts, behaviors, feelings, actions to bounce back from the everyday challenges that show up, right? So I made it into a step-by-step process so it's easy. And again, not school, don't take notes. You'll get all this information later. Step one, I think might be the hardest step. It's facing the situation. Looking around and acknowledging that we're in a challenging position and we don't make light of it and we don't hide from it. Because sometimes hiding from a problem feels like the right thing to do. Ignoring it, pretending it didn't happen, that's no big deal, got a bad grade, stuff that in my back pocket, ignore it completely, right? I don't mind that those people weren't very nice to me. I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to pretend it didn't happen. And I'm sure all of you have had sometimes have had that be your default. Something has happened, I'm going to ignore it. The tricky thing is that it almost never works. And ignored problems tend to grow bigger while we're avoiding them, right? For grown-ups like me, if I happen to get a very big bill from my credit card company, because last month was a very spendy month and I don't have the money, so I ignore it, next month's bill is bigger and people are calling my house. I can't ignore those things, right? And for you all in middle school, it's the same thing. You ignore a bad grade, you get another bad grade. You ignore a conflict and it gets bigger. Sometimes things can be let go, but most of the time you need to at least face it, acknowledge you're in the situation. And it's a hard step. It requires us to harness our bravery. We have to be brave to face our problems. All of us, not just youth, all adults too. We have to be brave. And when we have to acknowledge those challenges, And it's important in this step because some of us might do this more than others, that we face a situation the way it is today, but don't project it all the way out into our future. So if you didn't make a team, you face a situation that you haven't made the team and you won't get to play with your friends and you won't get to do all these things, but not that your life is ruined, you'll never play lacrosse again, right? So it's important to face a situation in a realistic way. All right. The second step is the reason I think we don't do the first step. The reason we don't face our problems is because the second step is feeling the feelings. And I think what keeps us from facing the situation oftentimes is we don't want to feel uncomfortable feelings. Because having situations that don't make us feel good, we don't really like, but we don't prefer to feel scared, worried, anxious. We try to push those feelings away. So what I'm going to mention here is this is also a harder step. The steps are harder at first, and when we confront the harder steps, they get easier as we go on because you have to face it, and then you have to feel some of those feelings. But it's an important part of the process. And it helps when we remember that any of these hard feelings we feel don't last forever. You know, when we're avoiding a situation and avoiding feeling those feelings, they can feel this big. And the truth is, most of the time, when we face a situation and feel those feelings, they're not small, but they're a little bit more manageable than we think they are going to be, and they don't last forever. I think sometimes, I'm afraid of being sad because what if I can't stop the sad once it starts? And the truth is, avoiding the sad takes a bigger toll than confronting the feeling and feeling it when it happens. So, step 2, feel the feelings. Step 3, use positive self-talk. Tell yourself you can handle this. It won't last forever. You've been through worse, right? And this is important. This is as real and concrete as feeling the feelings. We might sometimes skip this step. You're like, yeah, Marnie, I know, yay me. I don't have to do this step. I'm going to tell you, you do have to do the step. And positive self-talk can sound like, I've got this. And you know what? You might not be in the I've got this place yet. This problem might have you feeling like you don't have it. And something that you could try when you don't quite have that I've got this feeling is, I can't wait to see how this is going to work out. Right? So another way, if you can't wait to see how it's going to work out, you know that you're aware it's going to work out and you've got some anticipation and curiosity. If you can't always be your own cheerleader, at least let yourself be curious for how you're going to get through it, because you will. And so you can use that there. The other technique here is to talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend, right? If your friend has something go wrong, you're probably not going to say, oh, yeah, well, that's because you're the worst. That's exactly what I would expect of you, right? You would say to your friend, oh, you've got this, you've handled situations like this before, etc. So go ahead and use your step 3 as positive self-talk, and consider this to be, that's a really good coping skill that you're going to use for the rest of your life. Finally, step 4, we're almost in the home stretch now, is the problem solving part. Here's what's interesting. You might have said to yourself, problem solving is step 1. There's a problem. The first thing to do is solve it. And what I'm going to say is the fact that that's kind of our default is why we get tripped up so many times. Because when we get to step 4, after going through steps 1, 2, and 3, we're in a much better place to be a good problem solver, to have helpful problem solving. When the problem first turns up and we don't do steps 1, 2, and 3, oftentimes we're feeling that fight, flight, freeze, please, crisis thinking, and we're not really strong problem solvers. And so now that we've done those steps, we're ready to face the situation, because we faced the situation, we felt the feelings, we used positive self-talk. Now we're in a better place to get some helpful problem-solving solutions, right? So that's why we wait all the way to step 4 before we do it. Coping skills from step 3 and problem-solving go together really well. And once you get here, by the way, to step 4, the problem might not seem as big as it seemed during step one. Once you've gone through steps 1, 2, and 3, you're starting to kind of see the problem as a closer to a true size of the problem for you. It doesn't feel maybe quite so exaggerated because you didn't have all these unfelt feelings that were intensifying things. All right, so if you're following along with me, we get to step 4 and then we problem solve. Step 5 counts for the fact that sometimes our problem solving doesn't work for all of us. Sometimes we try to do something and it doesn't work. And then we try something else and it doesn't work. And what we need to do is ask someone we trust for help. And it's a really important part of this resilience model, and of getting yourself through hard times, is ask someone when you that you need for help. You might not need to do step 5. Sometimes you do 1, 2, and 3. The problem is the solution's apparent. You do the solution. Sometimes you do 1, 2, and 3, and you realize you don't really even need to do a solution because you kind of the problem is not seeming quite so important anymore, right? But you might need to step 5, you might not. But it's important to know when your problem solving that isn't working, don't give up, ask for help, right? And if the person we'll talk about this in a couple of minutes, but if the person you go to for help isn't helpful and that's still not working and the problem feels bigger than you, then you're going to use the resources that were just put in the chat to help you out. Because it could be that you can't locate a trusted adult, that trusted adult's ideas aren't helpful. And that is why there's always other sources for help. So we're going to practice. And as we go through, I'm very chatty. I can just chat forever. As we go through this, I'm going to give you the steps and the answers. And if you have your own way you would handle these steps, you can feel free to put them in the chat. You are welcome to converse with me about this, or I'll just chat it all the way through because I do like to talk. So an example is you worked hard on a school project and you just found out your grade isn't what you expected. Now, it doesn't have to be an actual F. That was the only picture I could get, actually, right? It could have been you expected an A and you got a C. You know what? Some of you could have expected an A and you got a B plus, and you are in a situation where you're not happy, right? And that's what I want to say. Things that are hard for us are not for other people to judge, right? If you wanted an A and you got a B plus, and that feels like a crisis that you need to bounce back from, I give you full permission to be like, I'm disappointed, right? So then you face it. I wanted an A, I got a B plus. I'm disappointed. You go through the steps. For this one, though, we're going to kind of go like you wanted an A, you got like a C, you wanted a B, you got an F, whatever, right? So your grade isn't what you expect. That's in the situation is as simple as you wanted an A, you got a C, right? Now, the other part of the situation is there might be some impact of the situation because it might impact your marking period grade. We're not going to go all the way to I'm never going to graduate, right? That's a little bit too far. That's taking on a problem and not facing the situation. It's kind of projecting the situation well into the future. But the situation is I want an A, I got a C. Might affect my marking period grade, right? And also other people might be part of the situation. Your parents might have a reaction to the grade. So the situation is really concrete in the now. Here's what I've got. And again, this means not just crumbling up the paper. Probably you don't get grades on paper anymore, by the way, sorry. But for those of you who still get a grade on paper, right, crumbling it up and throwing it out and hiding it, right, that's not going to help us. So face it. The next step is to feel the feelings. Now, that's personal to you. Everyone's going to have different feelings about this. Maybe you're mad at yourself. Maybe you're mad at your teacher. You might be embarrassed. You might be scared. You might be overwhelmed. Whatever those feelings are, there's no one right way to feel. But whatever those feelings are, you're going to kind of acknowledge them. Ugh. So what this might sound like for a situation like an A you wanted and you got a C is like, oh, I got a C. I can't believe it. I worked, that was A work. I don't even know what went wrong. I am so disappointed. And I don't know what's going to happen. I'm worried, right? That's it. These steps can be quick. For some situations, you're going through them like that, right? Now, step 3, you have to do your work on your self-talk, right? And so part of your working on your positive self-talk, maybe I'm only talking to myself here, is stopping your negative self-talk, which sometimes goes on automatic pilot before you even knew you pressed the play button, right? So some of you might have negative self-talk, and the first stop to positive is stopping the negative. That negative self-talk might be, I never do well, no matter how hard I try, I'm not smart enough, whatever that is, right? Notice it. Don't get mad that it's there, right? We don't have to blame it. We don't have to get mad at it. Just notice it. Whew, like that. Wow, I immediately went there, right? So for step 3 might have a mini step 3A. Notice notice the negative self-talk, and then replace it with the positive self-talk. And it's really up to you what it could be, right? And it could be things like, it doesn't have to be, I'm a genius. I mean, if that resonates for you, 100% you're a genius. But that also could be, I'm going to figure this out. This isn't going to stop me. I'm going to keep trying. I'm better than this grade, right? There's other positive self-talk. It doesn't have to always be the thing that doesn't feel quite true to you. But for the positive self-talk is an important step. And by now, as we've gone through these, you're probably feeling a little bit more clear-headed than you were when you started. And you can start thinking through the problem solving, right? And so this is the option, right, where you're going to do some problem solving, and it's very personal, up to you, your situation. But some ideas would be, you know, to find out if it's an option to redo the project for another grade. Talk to the teacher about where you missed the mark and how you can get back on track, right? Those are some problem solving things you might do. You could, right, you could talk to a friend who did better, right? And that may or may not help the situation. By the time you get here, you might be like, I see it's disappointing, but I can make it up, right? It could be that the problem solving is, well, that's disappointing, but I know I can work hard and make it up. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to really buckle down. I'm going to have to do the extra credit assignment that feels like it's a lot of work. Whatever it is, right? You can learn from these steps and figure something out that's going to problem solve. Now, sometimes you have a problem solving idea, like ask the teacher if you can redo it for another grade. Problem solving. Ask teacher. Teacher says no. You're like, oh. And in the moment the teacher says no, you might need to do a little mini start at step 1. Face the situation. I had a good idea. Teacher said no. Feel the feelings. I'm really mad at them about that. I can't believe they won't let me do that, right? Use positive self-talk. I thought of one solution, I can think of another one, and then you get to step 4, and then there's another solution. And I'm hoping that as we're going through these, some of you are saying, yeah, that's kind of how I handled this, or that's kind of how I handled this. Some of these come naturally to us sometimes. The trick is that they don't always come naturally to us. And when they don't, we want to remember what the steps are so we can do them. And the final step, right, is ask someone you trust for help. So if you've gone back and forth, you've done a couple ideas, it hasn't worked, you're starting to feel frustrated, you're starting to feel overwhelmed, another problem happens, and you're like, I can't handle too many things at once. This is where you're going to ask someone you trust for help. And they may or may not, and this would include, you know, in your schools, asking a school counselor either for suggestions about work habits that can help your work, or to talk about how you're feeling about how overwhelmed you are with all the things that are kind of piling on in your life right now, right? That's one of the reasons that school counselors exist and therapists exist and other helpful people that you can talk to exist, is specifically because sometimes too many things happen at once and we need someone to help us talk through what to do. A lot of those conversations revolve around these exact steps. So a little bit about who you can go to when times get tough. We like to talk about trusted adults because you want to go to a trusted adult. And the trick with trusted adults is you want to go to someone who's going to give you what you need. Maybe not what you always want, but what you need, right? So trusted adults are adults that listen to you. They're not judgmental. They take time to talk. They take you seriously. So far, are you picturing, right? Can you picture some trusted adults in your life? And can you picture some interactions that didn't go like this? Sometimes very well-meaning adults. I definitely was one of those from time to time with my own children. When they'd come to me and say something that really bothered them, I'd say things like, "Ah, that's nothing. You'll be fine tomorrow. That's no big deal." Those, those are statements that adults make to try to help you feel better, but they miss the mark. And so what we always are looking for is adults who listen to you, don't dismiss your problems as unimportant or minor. Remember what you say and ask you about later, and obviously are also honest to you when they're concerned and they want you to talk to someone else about what's going on with you. So that's what trust adults are. And for the parents in the room today, this is what I need to let you know. It's okay if you're not your child's trusted adult. Some of my very close colleagues who have lots of accolades in work in mental health and support and resilience were not their own children's trusted adults. Aunt Sue was the trusted adult that a child would go to, and that's perfectly fine. It's okay if you're not your child's trusted adult. What's important is that they have one or many trusted adults to go to. And as I'm wrapping up here, I wanted to share that, as I've mentioned, sometimes we all need some extra support. It's important that everyone knows that there's options out there when your helpful problem solving isn't working out. When it feels like you have more problems than you can possibly solve. It happens sometimes and it's not your fault. Things pile up, our coping strategies aren't working, and we aren't feeling very resilient. We've got no bounce to bounce back with. During times like this, besides everything that was shared in the chat, I want to share this information here as great resources you can use. I want to highlight the new 988 crisis line is a line that you can call anytime if you're in a place where you need some extra support, or if you are concerned about somebody else who needs support. The 988 crisis line staff are there to talk to you about your concerns or how you can help somebody else for whom you are concerned. Again, I want to highlight also all the resources that Jennifer has dropped in the chat several times as very good resources. But I want to end on a high note because we kind of started in a great place, want to cover our bases because we all sometimes have too much. And I want to share the story of the Olympic. Now you're saying, Marnie, you're showing us a ship sinking and you're telling us we're ending on a high note. So stay with me for just a moment. Some of you, Janelle knows of the Olympic because if any of you are fellow Titanic buffs like Janelle, you've heard of the Olympic. The Olympic was the sister ship to the Titanic. Now, everybody on this call knows what the Titanic is. No, I'm sure no one's like, what? The Titanic? Never heard of it. We've all heard of the Titanic. Why have we heard of it? Because it sank tragically. Have you heard of the Olympic? Nope. Sister ship, same shipyard, built the same time, sailed back and forth across the Atlantic for decades with no problems at all. It just did its job. Took people from Europe to New York, to Europe, to New York, to Europe, back and forth with no problem. And you've never heard of it. Now, likewise, if I asked you all to tell me a Titanic moment in your life, you'd be like, oh yeah, I got those, right? Because we pay attention to those. They make a mark on us and we remember them. Also, if I ask you to share the gold medal moments in your life, you know, when you stick the landing and you're amazing and everything goes well, you know those gold medal moments, right? They make up a tiny little chunk of our lives most of the time. We don't, can you think, when was your last gold medal moment? When was your last Titanic? It could have been weeks or months, or even for some of you, years ago. What we have a lot of is Olympic moments. Everyday moments where things go just right. We get up, we get dressed, we go to school, we come home, we do our sport, we have a snack, we eat dinner, we do our homework, we watch some TV, we go to bed, we wake up, right? Just the everyday things that we're supposed to do. Life is just working like clockwork, checking off the buttons. And you know what happens to those days that are unremarkable because there's no Titanic and no gold medal moments? They almost disappear. We forget about them completely because they were unremarkable. And so as we end today, I'm going to ask everyone to think of an Olympic moment from today. Just make a note of it, notice it. What was something that just worked right? Wasn't the most amazing thing of the day, wasn't the least, right? Whatever it is though, note it, capture it. If you were to mark on a calendar every Olympic day you had in a month, unless you're in a particularly big winning streak, winning a lot of lottos or something, or you're a particularly bad streak, you might have like 25 Olympic days in a month. And if you can kind of hold on to them, capture them, collect them as a resource, when the Titanic moments hit, which as we've discussed today, they're gonna hit, you're gonna have a little bit of ship word, ballast. You're gonna have a little bit of ballast to balance you out so you don't sink quite so hard when the hard times come. So Olympic moments are a coping strategy and a coping skill I leave you with today. We are open to questions at this point. I'm going to turn it back to Janelle. Jennifer, what do you want me to stop sharing my screen? Done. And we can turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Marnie. Thank you so much for presenting. We're happy that you could be here with us tonight. So now we're going to open up for questions. If you have not done so, feel free to share them in the chat or use the QA anonymous site. The link is in the chat, okay? So I'm just gonna start with some questions that we have here. First is someone asked, I believe it's referring to the 988 number. Can the number be used just to talk, or does it automatically mean that you're going to be referred to mental assistance?
Awesome. I thank you for that question. That is a great question. It is a support and talk line. You will not, it is used just to talk. You will be referred to mental assistance if the sense of the person on the phone is that your situation requires additional help. But the counselors on the phone are trained to what we call stabilize whatever your intense feeling is. So if you're calling for yourself and you're having some really strong feelings of hopelessness or anger or whatever is showing up for you, on the phone, their skill set is to help bring that down. So if your feeling was at a 10, their conversation will help you get to maybe a 6. I don't know, right? And so no, most of those calls do not get routed to 911, nor do they get routed to mental health assistance. They're there to help you through hard times. It is underutilized, in my opinion, for people who just need some help getting through a hard time.
Thank you. The next question is going to be, are there some ways for us to help someone move toward help?
All right, so here's what I'm going to say. I don't know whether this question, the asker was a youth or an adult. So I'm going to answer for both because the answers are a little bit different. Okay. For the youth on the phone, if it's a youth asking that question, if you're worried about a friend, it is absolutely appropriate for you to say to that friend, you're not yourself lately. You know, you're not hanging out with us anymore. You seem really down. I'm worried about you. What's going on? And then let your friend say something. And you can directly say to a friend, are you feeling so whatever they say they are, sad, angry, hopeless, that you think that you'd be better off dead? You can ask that question. It's always okay to ask that question. I know people are afraid to ask that question, but you can. And then as a youth, your job is to suggest that they talk to someone, but it is not your job to do that. Your job, you need to tell a trusted adult about your concern for your friend. So you can say to your friend, I really would like, I really think you need to talk to someone. Who would you like to talk to? Would you go do that? But for the youth in the room, what I'm going to say is do not try to help your friend or to make it your responsibility to convince them. It is okay. It is not telling on them. It is not a betrayal. It is critically important that you tell an adult yourself about your friend that you're worried about so that that adult can get them help. Because it is very hard to get help for people sometimes. Sometimes it's the hardest thing for adults to do, and it's too much responsibility for our children to try to help other children get help. So please, please, please tell an adult you trust, and let that adult help. Now, if it's an adult asking the question, what I will say is that is a different conversation and how to help. Janelle, did that cover that okay?
Yes, thank you. I actually, you touched on something that I wanted to touch on a little bit. You talked about betraying a friend. If that friend felt like someone confided in them and they didn't want anyone to talk about it, how can you, how right now, being in this
Yep.
room, maybe there's somebody in this room that feels like they could be betraying their friend. What exactly would you say to them?
I would say it requires a lot of bravery, and a lot of probably being more grown up than you feel like you're in middle school, but you might be betraying that confidence in that moment. So what you're betraying is the confidence, the secret the friend asked you to keep, but you're not betraying the friend, you are helping the friend. And whether that help is saving that friend's life, or whether that help is getting that friend connected to a place that can help them, because we can't, I know we feel like we can help our friends, but sometimes we can't. And what we can do is get them connected to adults that can help. And there are situations, I'll be honest, your friend could be mad at you that you told somebody else. I mean, they could tell you they're not your friend anymore. And all of that's coming from the friend who is in crisis and has problems that feel bigger than they can cope with. When that friend feels better, which is what talking to an adult and getting help is going to do for them, their perspective will probably change. But either way, it's not a betrayal. It can be a life-saving action. It's hard and requires bravery. But the alternative is just unthinkably terrible. And which is why I can sit here and say to you, I'm begging you to do the hard thing and tell an adult what your concerns are for a friend and let the adult help them. Janelle?
Thank you. The next question is what is the number that teens specifically can call to talk without being referred?
Okay, so 988 is nationwide for everyone. Here in New Jersey, the Youth Helpline of New Jersey is for teens up. I think they handle to almost 21. So in the chat, you'll see Jennifer shared the second floor Youth Helpline. Again, that is 100% a talk line. I actually was in a meeting today with the head of that organization, who is breaking down the fact that a very, very small percentage of the kids who call that line are actually calling because they're suicidal or need to be referred. They're calling to talk about their feelings, that they're feeling sad or they're anxious about something that's happening. And the people on that line, because I just talked to him today and he broke down the conversations they have. Again, it's just de-escalating. It's helping someone who's feeling really sad. It's a listening ear and someone who can say to you, that's really hard. I'm so sorry you're going through this. And that's the kind of language that you're going to hear when you call these helplines, is things like, wow, that's a lot. No wonder you feel sad. And that's the kind of thing you're going to hear.
Thank you, Marnie. And next, what do you suggest for parents that may notice early signs of mental illness in their child?
That's a great question. And I want to distinguish a little bit mental illness versus early signs of risk, right? Of risk. Because many people who start to feel like their problems are bigger than they can manage do not have a mental health diagnosis. And the reason that they're feeling like their problems are bigger than they can handle and that they are starting to think that life isn't for them they don't have a diagnosis of any mental disorder. They're just having situations that are too strong. I think what the more important thing for parents to notice is focus on protective factors, and things to look out for are the things that we as parents know to look out for. Changes in behavior, right? So if you think that if your child has always been this way, right, and they suddenly become this way, they've always kind of kept their room not neat, but not not all like a bomb went off in it, and now the room is all of a sudden much messier. Their personal appearance has changed. Things are different. Those are signs to look for. Besides other things that schools reporting behavior problems, the child is having trouble focusing, academic slipping, things like that. But what I'd say to parents is, when you're interacting with your kids, look for changes that last about kids go up and down, good days, bad days. I go up and down. I have good days, bad days. But changes that kind of appear and stick around for about 2 weeks is a really good time to check in with your child and say, I notice that you're not really wanting to talk to me anymore at dinner time. You just kind of look at your phone and eat your dinner and then go back to your room, and you haven't been talking to me a lot lately. What's going on? So that's the way to handle that. Anything else, Janelle?
I believe that's all for questions. Thank you so much, Marnie, for being here tonight, for answering our questions. We're grateful for your time and the information that you've shared on this important topic. Now we're going to actually segue back over to Anjali, who will facilitate. We have a Kahoot for us tonight. Okay. But thank you so much, Marnie, for all that you've done.
You're welcome. Can I stay and watch the Kahoot?
Absolutely, you can participate.
Oh, excellent. I'm in. Okay.
Okay, so now we'll be moving on to some trivia regarding mental health and awareness. Remember to try your best. There will be a prize for the first place winner. The prize is going to be a $50 Amazon card. And without further ado, let's begin. So to log in, you have to search up kahoot.it in your internet browser, and then you have to type the code that you see on the screen. The code is 468-3367.
All right, folks, I think Andrea is having some technical difficulties with the microphone. So the next question is, which could increase the risk of a youth developing a mental health problem? Is it experimenting with alcohol and other substances, trauma, hormonal changes, or history of mental healthness? Correct answer is all of the above. All right, Vanessa. True or false? Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 to 24 in the USA. True or false? All right, and the answer is true. It is the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 to 24. All right, Vanessa, still in first place. Let's see if Kelly can catch up. All right, if you suspect that someone is contemplating suicide, you should the answer is ask them directly if they are thinking about suicide. Oh, Kelly, it's in first place now. Next question. This is double the points. Which of the following is a reassuring statement? Is it the same thing happened to me when I was your age? You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Just get over it. It's not that bad. I'm here for you if you want to talk. And the correct answer is, I am here for you if you want to talk.
Look at everyone knew what a trusted adult would say. That yes. You
Yes,
guys-
we're very proud.
I'm incredibly proud right now of everybody.
Amazing. All right, next question. All right, Kelly, still in first place. Negative language can add to the blank associated with mental illness. Is it personal stories, recovery, understanding, or stigma? And the answer is stigma. All righty. Last question. This is it. Mental illness cannot be treated, cannot disappear, can be treated, none of the above. And the answer is it can be treated. All right, let's see who our winner is. Third place, Andrea. Second place, Vanessa. Drum roll. Kelly. Congratulations, Kelly. Please private message me or Janelle with your phone number and mail, and you are a winner of a $50 Amazon gift card. Thank you so much for everyone participating in the Kahoot.
Please be mindful that your email must match the email that you registered for the event with. Okay. All right, now it's time for our final raffle. And are we excited? The winner is Tovia Batson. You will be winning a $100 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. Please private message Jennifer Gomez _empower your email address. Again, this must match the email you registered for the event with, where we can send the gift card to. Thank you all for coming. All of the resources mentioned tonight are available in the chat. We appreciate you taking the time to attend our event and your willingness to learn. Please complete the evaluation sent in the chat as well. We will be sharing the recording of this event and all resources via email for those who registered. Your feedback is important to us. All the resources and an evaluation link will be emailed to you as well. Be sure to fill out the evaluation to be added to our mailing list for updates and to receive the flyer for our upcoming contests and events. Finally, we will be giving away a chance to win another $25 gift card as a raffle for those who fill out the evaluation. So once again, thank you all for being here tonight, and you all have a great night.
Thank you. It was very nice working with Empower and getting to talk to all of you tonight. I hope that you enjoy the night. It is still, please let the record show, it's 7:18 p.m. Blue skies, still full daylight out there. Enjoy the long hours.
Thank you. Thank you, Marnie, again for coming out.
Thank you.